What up, everybody? What up, everybody? Let me get to the spot. Hey, everybody, what is going on? This is Plan Your Greatness, and I am your gracious host, Carlton Hamilton, and let's get started today. And today is Motivational Monday. Yes, it is. And I've got a question for you. Who is speaking for you? We're going to discuss that here on Motivational Mondays on the Plan Your Greatness channel. Hey, we are back. We are here on Motivational Mondays on the Plan Your Greatness channel. And we're talking and we're asking the question, who is speaking for you? Because this is week 2 of Prison Week. And the theme of Prison Week is, how did I do it? Because again, for the last 20 plus years, I've been asked that question. Because on May 31st, 1999, I was released from prison. And so this year marked the 20-year anniversary. And so leading up to that, actually about a year or two ago, I started thinking that, wow, it's been 20 years. And I just started thinking of my journey and things that I've gone through. I mean, I have, since getting out, I've graduated from college. I've become a father. I began working in the corporate space. I got out of there and I started my own business. So I'm an entrepreneur. I actually created a second business, working on a third, and I kept some other things. I actually transcribed the journal that I kept in prison and turned those into 3 books. Those are going to be released a little bit later. But in the midst of writing the 3 books, what came out is the 4th book, which is going to be released first. And that is the Plan Your Greatness, Life, Love, and Business After Sports in Prison, which basically are the notes from the journal, which kind of gives you a little bit of a blueprint. And it tells you the 3 questions I asked myself, how I supported those questions, some insight into reflective things that I really had to think about and address while I was in prison. So that book covers a lot, and that's going to be released. I don't know if it's going to be later on this year. Once I get everything going, it's going to probably be released on Kindle, Amazon, all that other stuff first before it actually becomes a physical book. But again, people are out always asking me that questions like Carl or Carlton, whichever part of the country you know me from. How did you do it? Now, first and foremost, I can tell you, no one is going to speak for you the way you are speaking for yourself. And in the midst of that, you have to understand that not only are you or do you need to speak for you, you have to understand how you're speaking about you as well. Because a lot of the language that we use to describe ourselves can be very damaging. So again, no one is ever going to give you your voice. You have to create it, and as you get along and you get older, what you're going to understand is that you're going to recreate this voice. You're going to refine it a little bit. It's not going to be very noticeable to a lot of other people, but you know that you've made some changes in there. So I have to take you all the way back to when I was in school, because my mother started me in school a lot earlier, being the 7th of 9 children, than most kids. And as I had a chance to look back on Facebook and we have people's profiles, there were kids that were a minimum of year, most of the kids I went to school with, they were a year older than I was, and sometimes over a year and a half older. Now, that doesn't sound like much in real life, like when you get in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. If there's a year or 2 or even up to 4 years difference between you and someone, that's not a big deal. But when you are talking about kids that are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there's a gap as far as just being on the planet and experiencing life up to 2 years, that is massive. And that's exactly what was happening to me. So when I went into the schools, it was very obvious that I was not up to par academically. I was struggling in math, reading, comprehension, every measurable in school, I was struggling. But the one thing that I knew that I brought from my neighborhood into those schools was I was a damn good athlete. I could throw a football, I could throw a baseball, I could shoot, dribble, I could hit a bit, I could do everything as far as sports goes. So when I got to the schools, I knew very well where my place of comfort was. It was on the playground. I'd be very quiet in the classrooms, but I would wander out to the basketball court or baseball, whatever they were doing, and I would just stand there and I would, see when I could actually get my moment to get in. Basketball, I would ask, hey, can I get picked, or can I get on the court with you? Because I knew once we got on the court, I was going to give you the business. And then it was going to be like, we don't know your name, to where at the end of recess, it was like, what's your name? And it was like, my name is Carl. Oh, okay, Carl, man, you got some skills. You can play. It happened every time. So that, because I was going through special ed, because I was consistently struggling with school and I didn't know how to go about catching up. I mean, I could see the math tutor, Mr. Wolf. I could see the special ed instructors. I was struggling just everywhere. So again, just think about this kid just struggling in every area of his academics, going through school, having to play this game of being able to have sports speak for him. And that carried all the way through middle school, junior high, high school, college, and professional sports. Because never at any point in time did I get caught up academically. So I always felt that the only way that I was going to level the playing field was to show them how good of an athlete was. It was very much like an artist, and sports was my voice and the world was canvas. And I was actually just always painting through sports. But now see what's going on with that and see the danger of that. Because what happened is when I got injured and I had to leave the game of baseball, my voice was left behind, metaphorically. And so that was so damaging to my personality and my psyche that I'm now in a world that I'm not prepared for. I mean, when you add all the factors in as far as how I grew up, what I went through in school, I mean, it was absolutely terrifying what I was about to experience. And so I was trying my best to hide. I mean, I was playing in softball league. I was playing in basketball league. I was doing things that actually gave me joy. But what was being overlooked or glossed over was the fact that I was absolutely terrified of the next phase of life. And so because of that, I became depressed and I was fighting it, trying to go to school, trying to work, trying to have relationships. But because I was so, my self-worth had took such a shot, I couldn't hang in relationships. I couldn't focus enough on school. I couldn't be responsible and relied on for jobs. And so all those areas of my life just were collapsing, which then resulted in me being homeless. And the only thing that I had was my car. So everything was in my trunk. Everything was in the back of the car. And I think about that. And every time I pull up next to somebody and I see a car just piled in the back, I'm wondering, is that person on the road that I was on? Are they on their way down? Because then it just continued. I continued making bad choices. I continued to have that same way of thinking about myself, which resulted in a deeper level of homelessness. And eventually, trying to get home, I got involved in an armed robbery. So now I have hit the bottom of the bottom. I now have a felony conviction. I don't have any education. I don't have any skills. And now I'm incarcerated. So what am I going to do? And one of the things that I've constantly harped on is that when I entered into prison, one of the things that I noticed that I went through was the 5 stages of grief. I went through anger, I went through denial, anger, bargaining, depression. And depression, again, I've always said I think is the longest phase in that process. And then I went to acceptance. And once I got to acceptance, I looked around and said, okay, yep, I accept the fact that I'm in here because I did something that anybody, you do that, you violate someone else's rights, you should spend time in jail. But I said, what am I going to do with this? I don't necessarily belong in here. I'm in there, yes. Well, let me change that. I do belong in there, but I'm not going to have this be the defining moment of my life. As far as this is just me. And so what I began to do is I began to read like a beast. I began to write in my journal every day. I began to attend counseling classes. I took college courses. And upon my release, I transferred all those courses to the local community college. And then from the local community college, I transferred after a year over to the local university, Arizona State University. And within 3 years, I got my college degree. Then I stepped into the corporate space. I began working as this 9-to-5 employee. I began asking a couple of other questions, which created the tax business that I had. I think I've gone into some detail as far as how I actually did that. But I went from creating the tax business to creating the transportation company, to becoming an entrepreneur, editing my journal, writing the journal and turning it into a book, then authoring the Plan Your Greatness, the book that's going to be released first, Plan Your Greatness, Life, Love, and Prison After Sports, and Life, Love, and Business After Sports and Prison. So I began on that journey. And so again, this is if you're following me, I'm still on the thread of that question, which is, who is speaking for you? And as you can see by what I've just explained to you, is that I now took control of who was speaking for me. So no longer was it sports and the material things that came along with being a professional athlete. It was actually my knowledge. It was actually my wisdom. It was actually the time that I had spent creating this new person, my experience, and the relationships that I had from that new experience, which then created the new me. I had a new belief system. I had a new vibration. I had a new frequency. And I had a new mindset. And so then I took those things into everything that I'm doing right now. So again, I'm always asked the question, Carlton, how did you do it? So what I'm explaining to you is you have to understand that if you are struggling, you're not speaking for yourself. The voice that is speaking for you and to you, that is not a positive voice. It is not speaking in your best interest. So I had to take absolute control of that. And so once you begin to take control of the voice that is speaking for you and to you, you are absolutely on the path to planning your greatness. All right. So today on Motivational Mondays, until we meet again, I want you to do this. I want you to look at your life and I want you to ask the question and say, who is speaking for me? And what is that? And how is that voice speaking to me? And if you really do a good analysis of that, you'll see what it's actually saying for you. And then you'll see how that voice is speaking to you. And that'll be one of the first steps that you can take as far as taking control of your life and having a better voice that is speaking for you. All right, so make sure you are hitting the like button, the share button, the subscribe button. Make sure you are hitting that notification bell. We're also on Twitter and we're also on YouTube, not YouTube, but we're also on Instagram. And today is Monday. And so what I want you to do is look out for me going live on Sundays. That's what I'm gonna start doing that, at least for maybe an hour or so. And if it goes longer and maybe I'm taking phone calls, I'm not sure how that whole thing works, but I'm gonna look for it. I'm looking to do that as far as engaging with my audience a little bit more. But I will end, as I always do, plan your greatness. You know why? Yeah, because no one else will. I will see you next week on Motivational Mondays and throughout the week on the other days. You guys have a great week, and I will see you next week.
No one knew he was home. No one said